Alright, folks, I noticed this lock doesn't make very much noise, so you just have to believe me that maybe you see it pop up or whatever.
I could make a noise.
What?
I could say click.
Don't click, it's fine. I'm Woody Walls. Howdy, folks. We're back here for another Wayhomer review. I've screwed up my rhythm by talking about the lock. We're back here for another Wayhomer review. Here's how it works for the uninitiated. I have just left the cinema. It's over there, where I have seen a...
Oh, that's my hand. Wait.
They believe you. They recognize this parking garage by now. Seen a film, and I'm going to tell you about that film on my way home because it just saves time that way. And today, we're here to talk about How to Train Your Dragon 2. We need lights. 2! Alright, so, synopsis is as follows. First film happened. There's a wrap-up for you. And in the second film, we join the action 5 years later, where Stoic, who is the chieftain of the village of Burke, which is where all this stuff happened, is looking at retiring and passing on the horned helmet of power to his son Hiccup, who is obviously the protagonist, the Jay Baruchel voiced protagonist from the first film. But, of course, he has his own designs for what he wants to do because he's having a great time basically running around and exploring on Toothless and trying out his new and fancy technological gizmos. He is kind of like a medieval Tony Stark with a dragon. So, but, of course, things don't stay easy, because they never do, because otherwise it would be relatively boring. And what happens is they find there are dragon rustlers, I guess you would say, who are stealing dragons to give them to Drago. Of course, that would be his name. I think that they were pronounced Drago or something. I don't know. For him to build his dragon army. And so he wants to take all the dragons. All of them, because he's very selfish when it comes to dragons. And obviously, since Burke kind of likes their dragons and they've sort of gotten used to having their dragons around, they don't want their dragons taken. So there is obviously going to be a bit of conflict there. Yeah, that's it. That basically, it's a pretty straight shot into conflict and then more conflict and then even bigger conflict. That's your synopsis. I mean, there's not, yeah. Okay. Here's the thing. Going into this film, a couple things. First, the first film was so pleasantly, surprisingly good. And part of that was because it was so surprising. In that it could have very easily have been just a typical DreamWorks fare where it just was decent. Usually the most you could hope for was decency. But instead, and I don't think at this point, this being a sequel that we're talking about, it's going to spoil anything, where, you know, when I reveal the end of the first film, they maimed their main character. Both their main characters wound up maimed. Which you don't do in animated movies, at least not in the US. You just don't do that. So that was startlingly refreshing, that there were actually consequences to what happened, and more than just, oh, this beloved character died and we all looked sad for a few minutes. No, they survived, but with consequences. So that was very, very interesting, and the first film was surprisingly good. So going into the second film with knowing that it had the potential to be as good as the first film, or hopefully better, which was a hell of a weight to carry, because, again, it's not a surprise now. We know you can do it, DreamWorks. We've seen it happen. Sorry. With that in place, and the fact that it is a sequel, and sequels automatically come with their own baggage and fear and tremulation that goes along with them, because having enjoyed the first one, you almost feel like you have to brace yourself for the disappointment of the difficult sophomore album, so to speak. And on top of that, you had a trailer that frankly wasn't very good. In fact, I've gotten to the point now where if I see a trailer that's giving away a lot of the film, my assumption and my hope is that it's like Star Trek 2 or like Captain America 2, where they have spliced it in such a way, they've edited it together so that you think one thing is happening, but another thing is happening. So they're showing you the bits, but they're showing it to you in the wrong order. You know, a speech in Captain America 2, which you think is being delivered to one character, is being delivered to another character. You know, somebody you thought was at the head of the giant juggernaut starship in Star Trek 2, turns out it wasn't. That sort of thing. It's a nice little surprise, a little reveal. The problem here is that they do reveal some things in the trailer that I wish they had left alone. Now, there's two things in particular. One, which you might not have caught. The other one is pretty apparent because they make sure you know it's a huge plot point, is that his mom shows up. Now, part of the problem with this is that, well, there's a great scene that involves the mom, and if you had not known, and it's in the trailer, I'm not spoiling anything if it's in the freaking trailer, if you had not known it was the mom, you would have been like, whoa, what's going on? You would have been where the character is, who's going, wow, what's going on? You would have been like, wow, what's going on? And you would have been simpatico with the Dragon Rider guy. But instead, you have that, whatever flavor or irony it is, where you know something more than the character does, but it's not to your benefit. I really wish they had just left that alone. And there's another really awesome reveal that you kind of go, oh, I see where they had this in the trailer as well. But it's still pretty cool, so I'm not going to talk about it in case it is spoilery. But, so, anyway, I had my reservations going into the film, especially because in the trailer, and sadly they kept it in the film, there are those heartfelt moments, capital H, capital F, heartfelt moments, in that they're trying to do shortcut, emotional type of things with characters in ways that people don't actually talk like. You know, it's like I was saying, you know, that's all, oh, what you're looking for isn't out there, it's in here. Okay, the only people in reality who say that are when guys are trying to get you into bed, ladies. No one actually talks like that. Ever. If they do, then you're either in a film and you need to be aware of the fact that you're in a film, or somebody is trying to take you for a ride. Not the kind of ride that I was talking about before. I mean a metaphorical ride in general. So I was afraid going into the film, all over the place afraid. Now, the good news is this. It's not as bad as the trailer would lead you to think. Or as heartbreaking, because if you've enjoyed the first film, it sucks when you see characters that you've liked in a situation that you've liked sort of ruined by the fact that it's a sequel. So yes, it is not as bad as the trailer would make you believe. Now, the one thing I will say is that apart from lots and lots of flying and dragon fighting and stuff, there are very few moments where actual plot happens, as I come to think about it. Because generally, the movie sort of sets something up and then goes into Conflictsville and then only sets something else up for something that you can see coming a mile off. Which was the other, and again, it's a spoiler thing, I can't ruin it for you, but, whereas with the first film, there were surprises in store, there's sort of a wrinkle on the surprise into how the obvious thing happens, but it's still not as, it lacks the punch of the first film. Now, that's not to say there's nothing to be said for big-ass dragons fighting. I will say this, you get more kaiju action in this film than you did in Godzilla, which is sad, but you get a lot of fighting, you get a lot of interesting dragon stuff happening, so you are entertained, but it feels less meaty than the first film, or at least as my memory of the first film, as my memory slowly fades as I grow older, my memory of the first film, I remember it being slightly chunkier than this. which is fine, but all of that leads to one of the surprising things, and that here we are halfway through the year before we found a film where if you paid the money to see the 3D, you probably will leave feeling satisfied. Because there's so much of that flying and blowing up and stuff action going on, and because it's an animated film, and especially a CG animated film, it's really easy to make it very 3D worthy. And that's what happens here. So that's all of a goodness. But you get some character development, you get some growth to the characters. Not a lot considering it's been 5 years, but there is some there. And things proceed a bit. So, I don't know. And there's even some things in there where it's obvious you're going to get new toys, but the way they're introduced is actually cool enough where not only do you not care, but you're like, I would totally buy that toy. So that's interesting as well. That's very rare. So, I mean, there's not much to talk about beyond that because there's just so much dragon fighting and flying, and there's only so many things one can say about that, especially because you get into Spoilersville, other than saying you pretty much get conflict 15 minutes in, and the conflict keeps going throughout. But it was entertaining. I wasn't going in there for, you know, the CG animated equivalent of a Merchant Ivory film, so I was entertained. It was like Edge of Tomorrow, an entertaining film. It lacked the surprise of the first film. It lacked some of the punch of the first film. But it did have some very good things in there. So normally, I would give such a thing a 3.5. However, I'm going to say that because I'm so impressed by actually seeing a movie where I plonked down the coin for 3D and felt like I hadn't been robbed, that I'm going to give it another half cup and take it back up to 4 cups, which is what I gave the first film anyway, which I don't believe was even available in 3D, or if not, we didn't see it in 3D. So, I will also say that you've got some really great voice work from not only Cate Blanchett, but from Digimon Hounsou. I'm probably screwing that name up, but he's a really great actor, and you wouldn't even know it was him. So I'm not even going to tell you who it is, but he's in there. So that's all very good. Oh, and Kit Harington's in there from Jon Snow of Game of Thrones. So he's in there as well. And I wouldn't have recognized him. But then again, I'm not going to recognize voices, probably because I'm half deaf. Anyway, so should you see it? Yes. If, I mean, I would say yes, because the thing is, there's so much action on the screen that even with the reduced amount of plot, the additional amount of action means that you should see it on the big screen just to get the full effect. And like I said, if you are 3D skeptical, as you should be, then I would say, yeah, go for it. Because, I mean, CG animated films work best, and this one was done very well. It felt like it was designed with 3D in mind and not in an annoying way. So all of that is good. So there you go. 4 out of 5 cups for How to Train Your Dragon 2, or We Haven't Trained Them Enough Yet, or something. So, that brings us to the end, I guess, of another Wayhomer review. Thanks so much for watching. I appreciate as everyone has been patient now that I'm going to roll this one out and the other ones that I've got in the can as quickly as I can to try to catch up. But as I've been threatening, you're going to see something shortly that I think will help us get more of these out faster. So until next time, Widget Walls here. See you next time on the Wayhomer Reviews. Bye.